anytime throughout the history of the sport, you've had a first-year coach, second-year coach, everyone just always assumes, hey, man, second year, that's when it takes off. Second year, that's when everything takes root. So we're obviously around here hopeful that that happens. You're hopeful that that happens. But really from a tangible standpoint, for the 99.9% of people who have never run a program or even played in one, take them through how different it really is year one going into year two.
Yeah, I think anytime there's a 1 to 2, it might be week 1 in the season to week 2. It might be, like we're talking season 1 to season 2. There's just experiences that you go through, and you go through them together. And the relationships for us are now deeper, stronger. Everyone understands each other and where they're coming from. So whether it's coach to player, player to player, and all of us on the staff just working together, I think there's an alignment that continues to happen. There's an understanding of what we want to accomplish, and most importantly, how we want to accomplish it. So, I think it comes down to that. It comes down to knowing each other, the relationships just being stronger. And I'm really proud of our staff for how they've continued to just evolve, continue to work together, build amongst themselves a relationship, but also pass that down to the players. And I think they feel that. This team always is going to understand what's going on up top and feel that. And our chemistry, I think, is aligned, and we continue to get better. We continue to find those little adjustments and tweaks that we can make to our program, both on the field and off the field. That's the way it's always going to be. It's not just a year 1 to year 2 thing. It's going to be a year 2 to year 3. But I think the biggest jump will happen, and that's our hope here this season.
The classical sense of taking over a program would indicate logic says throw as much at him as quickly as you can, put him through the fire as quickly as you can, because you want to filter out who's not going to be there, and you want to find out as much about your organization and your team as quickly as possible. But then you fast forward to 2024, and you get here, and there's this mechanism called the post-spring portal, where we can push guys if we want to, but the edge is way closer and way more pronounced on this cliff than it used to be. So was there ever a balance of, here's what I'd love to do in spring, here's the reality of what could happen if we fully just dunk guys in the water in spring, and therefore it made you think maybe there's a line that we have to walk year one, whereas that's just kind of in year 2?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's a balance. That's a word that does come to my mind sometimes, but I think we still attacked it. And so, in the spring last year, we knew that there really wasn't probably much from a high-end quality that we were going to be able to bring in the program with the portal. We had who we had, and we just poured into those guys, tried to meet them where they're at. So that's when I think about balance. That's what I do think about, because there was a lot that they were going through. It was intense for them when Coach Saban retired. It was intense, those weeks and those early months when our staff was being put together and they were trying to figure out who was going to coach them. But in the end, I felt like we really attacked it, because that's the only way I and really the staff that I have around me know how to do things. And I'm really proud of the way these guys in this program, whether it was last year or what we continue to do now, where they just continue to embrace change, because change is really hard, and that's hard for anyone in every walk of life. And these guys really embraced us, embraced what we want it to look like, the vision we have for the program. And what I really love is that I feel like the players now have embraced it so much to where they're making it their own. And we talk about player-led just like every other program does, but what's really happening is the standard, and that's what I see us doing. I see our guys embracing it, making it their own. The investment is on another level because they feel like they got a say, they got a voice, but in the end, they know the work's the work.
Every year, if you just watch the entirety of college football, there are 3 to 5 results that just sledgehammer you in the face. Never saw it coming. Oklahoma, Alabama last year was one of those for me. And I remember listening to you after the game, and it kind of seemed like it struck you that way as well. You're coming off an LSU win not too long ago, and you've got a path to the playoff, and all of a sudden, wham! And then scoreboard makes it look like it's not even close, and turnover-filled game, and it's just ugly. So then coming out of that, you deal with trying to get in the playoff. All right, we didn't get in the playoff, and now we're going to go to a bowl game. Bowl game, not aesthetically pleasing. That's year 1. Mm-hmm. All right, so Nobody really transferred out of here post-spring. You're talking about the continuity and consistency and everyone knowing how to do it the way you want to do it. But how much do those moments bleed into maybe upward mobility if you harness it the right way?
Yeah, those experiences are what's shaping who we are and what we're going to remember. And we've used a lot of those experiences in the off season prior to spring to get better, whether it's execution on the football field or mindset or what we're going to do if we're in these spots, first quarter, second quarter, end of game situations. Just talking a lot about what our response is going to be in those moments, but how we're going to try to do everything we can to avoid being in those spots. Going back to that time frame, it was something because I really feel like building some momentum at that time of the year, and had played some good football the few weeks before. Had a good balance of offense and defense, team football in all ways, and so that game certainly you're going to respect every opponent you play, and especially in the SEC. And at that time, going on the road, was something that we got to continue to do better. It got the best of us, and so we're going to learn from that experience. We're going to learn from everything that's happened since, but we're also going to continue to make sure we got the right people around us. And as we entered that portal after the bowl game, you could really see us really attract the right guys, and the right guys believing in what we're doing and forging ahead.
When you're running a program, there's an identity you want the program to have. You want it to reflect your values. There's an intensity that you ideally want in your building. There's a vibe that the culture gives off. How do you gauge when that is where it needs to be? Because I'm blessed enough to be able to go to all these places. When you walk down the hallways, when you interact with people, it's way different than in the supermarket for obvious reasons, because there's a different level of intensity in the halls of a college football athletic complex than there is at Publix or Winn-Dixie or whatnot. But how do you gauge, I've got this thing 80% where I want it, 90% where I want it. Wow, we're in the sweet spot. Let's not change a thing.
I think there's a couple things that jump out to me, and probably the biggest one is when the players come to me with things that are just real, like substance things that matter. They're going to make us better. And it might be things within the program that they just, it's not wrong, but they feel good about it. And it's just like, hey, they're emphasizing keep the direction going with it, or something that they just want to bring to my attention. That communication is what I really think is important. That's communication, and that relationship and that trust is what really gets a culture going, and where at least how I want it run and where I want it to go. And the thing we have to understand is that the culture every single day is affected by what we do and the things we say, and of course our actions and all of that. But that's going to be something that we care for in a very meticulous way. I mean, it's important for us to make sure every single day we're continuing to build that trust, and all it takes is one thing and it can go the wrong direction. So our guys do an excellent job of building that trust, continue to keep that trust. The accountability, I think, to each other is really where it starts, and they've done an excellent job with that.
Pretty much everyone who's an adult watching this now has worked in the workplace, and a new boss comes in. And there's all kinds of people in a workplace. Some of them make sure they're front and center. You would call those brown nosers, and you would say, there they go. And then you may have the attitude of, well, I'm gonna prove myself through my work. And sometimes those people can seem a little reclusive when you're first there because you don't know them. But then over time, they prove themselves through their work, and the guy who was the quietest when you took over ends up being one of your best workers and one of your most dependable confidants. Is that the way it is when you take over a college football program?
Yeah, you have to have some level of kind of throwing yourself at whatever you're supposed to do, whatever your job is, depending on your role. But that's what I love about our staff, is just putting one foot in front of the other each and every day, and trusting and believing in our process, how we want to go about things, what we know it want it to look like, knowing that we're not there yet. It doesn't happen overnight. That's what I love about our players too, that they really continue to make that progress, and every single day just focus on what they can control in that moment. So it's staff, it's the team, all coming together, all really buying into that process.
I thought the way the quarterback position was talked about here last year certainly had its ups and downs because quarterback play had its ups and downs here last year. And as a result, the team had its ups and downs last year. And it's always been the age-old adage of quarterback usually gets too much credit, too much blame and whatnot. But from your vantage point, when you're looking at it, it's never as simple as we lost because one thing's in the blank. It's normally like 47 things in 47 blanks. Mm-hmm. So from your vantage point, when you look at a game and it doesn't go your way, I could look at an incompletion percentage, or I could look at turnovers. When you dive 10 layers deeper, what is that like post-game breakdown like, to where your analysis is more than, well, we just got to get better quarterback play?
Yeah, and I think that's what's exciting for us, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is there was a lot of things in every game, even the ones we won, but the games that we lost are, of course, the ones that everyone looks to. But it wasn't just one. Yeah, if one of those areas, you brought up quarterback, is better, that helps, okay? And that's an very important part. And, we're a quarterback-driven offense, for the most part. And, the personnel around have to do their part to support the quarterback as well. But I just think that there's all these different areas that we can continue to get better at. And if everyone just does their job, and we just, in the defensive side, in each position, offensive side, special teams, continue to just work, it's amazing what, exponentially we can do, how we can exponentially grow and be what we can become, because it's not just one thing. And that's always going to be that way, but I'm excited about the way everyone's taken on that accountability, that ownership, really poured into, investing into what they can control. And I think it's showed up here this spring that it isn't just one area has gotten a lot better and the other just have to keep doing what they're doing. They've all continued to really raise their game.
It's crazy when you think about how full a plate is for the head coach at an SEC program. You're at Alabama. Your plate's full with just football-related matters, fundraising-related matters, and all the externals that revolve around a football program. But then if you're the head coach at Bama, there's also this added layer of probably the two biggest legends to ever coach the sport both coached here. Therefore, the platform that the head coach at Alabama stands on is one with a really big megaphone. And a lot of times people look to the head coach at this program to be a voice not only of the program but of the sport overall, which is pretty daunting in some cases because the sport is changing every 5 minutes and the world you're in right now has no consistency. So how much of that role do you accept, feel comfortable with? Like, is that something that dawned on you as soon as you took this job of, it's going to be a little more than just being a football coach of a program?
Yeah, there's no question that, my experiences, even though they're not the same, the level as far as what you just mentioned, and you got two of the greatest ever that have ever coached the game that, you kind of get compared to, or expect to live up to. But there has been on a smaller scale, places I've been where you followed some greats that, at least in that program, are thought of as some of the best to ever walk the sidelines. And, I think biggest thing is just embrace that, that, man, how lucky am I to be at a place like that where these greats have coached, these great players have played, all of that. And, just love the challenge of trying to build on, and people kind of wonder, like, how can you build and make it greater? I think you can. I think there's areas that you can always add to the program. It might be done a different way, or might, and the times have changed, as you mentioned, and so it's going to look different no matter what. But just wanting to add to what has already been established through decades in this program is an awesome responsibility. It's one that I embrace. It's one that I have a little bit of experience at other places getting the chance to do, but I love it. And I think trying to educate our players and understand the tradition and where they come from and why this program is the way it looked at the way it is special. And our staff does that too. And I wanted to find guys that wanted to embrace that, have enough confidence about themselves to be able to do the work that's needed, but also humility about everything that's happened here, that, hey, there was great ones before us and there's going to be great ones after us too, down the road. But in this time frame that we get a chance to have an impact, let's do everything we can to make it great.
You were mentioning your staff there. When you're filling out a staff, they're several compartments you have to consider. There's the football compartment, there's the recruiting compartment, there's the player development compartment, but also how aware do you have to be of you, your personality, your skill set, your strengths and weaknesses, and especially with the weaknesses, or especially the areas you're not comfortable with, making sure that bucket is filled above and beyond with the way you fill out your staff?
Yeah, I think there's pillars that you have in a program, right? There's the strength and conditioning coach, there's the training, there's the head trainer, there's the head of recruiting, personnel, your coordinators, and so there are these pillars. And like you mentioned, there's strengths and weaknesses that everyone has. I have them, and so finding pillars that can all fit together, have the same vision, but not having all of the same like cookie cutter type personalities or just way they go about it. And in the end, it's humility again that brings us all together to allow us to grow, to take things from different people to do what's best for our football program. And so I think we've got a great group of guys in those pillar positions that run their room, run their area, and I'm really proud of the way that and the strength of the assistant coaches and those that are in those areas underneath those pillars, the way they embrace their role as well, because a lot of coaches on our staff have been head coaches, been coordinators, are going to be head coaches and coordinators very soon if they haven't. And I'm excited about the way that they've all come together and really got us all going in the same direction.
I think that's maybe, out of all the things I've been able to experience, the most eye-opening thing about being around high-level leaders is when you're a little kid, especially if you grew up in the South, a little kid looks at college football head coaches more like superheroes than people. And so you look at that and, well, that guy's got no weakness. I mean, he wouldn't be the head coach at yada yada if he had any weaknesses. But then you grow up to realize, well, they are high achievers, but they're also people. The CEO of this company over here, he's a high achiever, but he's a person. The difference between him and maybe a person who's failed in life is he acknowledged his weaknesses. He was humble enough, as you said, to acknowledge weakness, and then he was smart enough and cerebral enough to surround himself with people that supplemented. And it's an observation more than a question, but out of all the things that I've learned by being able to be around who I get to be around, it's been that. It's been you raise the curtain on a guy, you peel back the layer on a guy. There are flaws just like I have, but he sure has surrounded himself with the right folks.
Man, you are right in line with how I think. Surrounding yourself with the right people to just balance each other, to bring what they bring. And we talk about personalities and character and all that. The character needs to be high level. The integrity, I guess, is really what's most important. But the personalities, the energy guy, the one that's a little more cerebral, all those, and just tapping into the strengths, help all of our staff cover up for the weaknesses. And again, identifying what those things are, maybe that you want to continue to improve on or need to improve on, a lot of times comes by being around other high-end achievers, but also just realizing that, hey, you don't know everything, or you're not where you need to be yet in that area that you maybe even oversee.
You were talking about your staff. How, in your experience, how long do you have to be around a guy, have him on your staff before you realize that's a future head coach?
That's a really good question. I think, fortunately for me, and this is kind of working backwards to answer your question, but I've had a chance to work with many of our staff, not all, at different places. And even on another level, I've worked as an assistant with many of these coaches. And really has allowed me to understand how just driven these guys are, know what they are truly all about, seen their work, and know the direction and path that they have ahead of them. I think you can kind of tell pretty quickly, but I also think, that there's again, if a young coach just has a couple of those character traits, and most importantly, just really wants it, hard work, and is driven, I think there's a lot that can be accomplished. And again, it goes with being at the right place at the right time. Some of it's timing, some of it's who you learn from, who your mentors are. And so I do think that you can tell pretty quickly who are the ones that probably are just built to be front and center, can handle anything that comes their way, can be even keeled, have a good way about them, whether it's big public settings or, when tense moments are happening within the team or behind closed doors with other peers. And so I think that you can kind of tell who can handle those moments the best. And a lot of it's just, who they are as a person to begin with.
Do you ever see guys, I'm not asking do you see guys evolve, because everyone evolves, or hopefully they evolve for the better, but do you ever see guys who you once upon a time thought probably not in the cards for him slowly evolve, and then maybe 5 years later you're looking and saying, this is night and day different? Well, I don't know what happened, because it can happen with players as well. The trigger flips, this light switch goes on, and all of a sudden he wasn't, and now he is, and I don't know what happened. Hopefully I was a part of it, but does it ever work out that way?
Yeah, I think that when you ask that question, I think about former players of mine especially, that you envision as players, or guys who were GAs, or just entry-level roles, and that might have been 10, 15, 20 years ago, and now all of a sudden they're coordinating, or they're head coach, or they might not even be in coaching, but they're doing amazing things as a CEO, and you think of them as that player that was just coming out of high school, or just really growing and figuring things out, or made mistakes that you just at the moment you were thinking, what the heck's going on here, and the best of the best learn from their mistakes, but they learn from others. And again, I'm always going to be in favor of the great person. They got to have some intelligence, some IQ, depending on the role that you're going to put them in. But find those great people, and if they really want to do the job, get those great people into a role supporting you or any part of your program, and let them go to work and let them do their magic, because I think they'll figure it out.
You've been here over a year now, over a calendar year. You've physically lived in this area code. You've worked at this program. So I know you don't have a huge social life outside of here, because there aren't 35 hours in the day, but whatever you can do out of here for fun, how much is your routine sort of settled in, and your new norms sort of settled in?
Yeah, and that's been the best part about just from a social, or just my family, is now we are settled in. Everyone kind of, it's a year later and still the same questions. Hey, how you settling in? I hope after a year we've gotten everything at least under control a little bit. But, my family, my wife, she really does a great job with our coaching staff, but she also, through my youngest daughter, who's a 7th grader, she gets to have a piece of kind of other people in the community too, and all of that. And so we've really enjoyed living here. We've been treated so well, this I don't even want to say city, but this region, there's so much, of course, that we know of towards Alabama and Alabama football that people want to do to help accommodate, and it's been, I can't say enough about how much we've been embraced, locally, and looking forward to many years to come living here in Alabama.
When I was down here about a month ago, you guys have had your spring games and scrimmages and whatnot since then. To me, I look at you on paper, wide receiver has a chance to be an exceptional room, but your defensive back room also looks really, really upgraded, just like good competition in that room. So, you're nodding your head. I assume you think those are two strengths of your team. But beyond those two layers, you can talk about those if you want to, but beyond those two layers, what are some of the other units, areas, individual players that you look at and you say, this year we're going to get from him, or we're going to get from them maybe what we lacked a little bit last year?
Yeah, so receiver and defensive back, I think Jamarcus Shepard with the receiving group, we had some turnover and really some guys that we've brought into the program that I think add to Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. It's just really fun seeing the personality of Shep come out in that group, really attacking everything, the work there. I'm excited about the development of that position. And then the defensive backs is a year ago where we were at, and we had names and we brought guys in, but they were completely new to this program, and in many cases completely new to college football coming out of high school. So, we took some lumps, but those lumps, I think, relative to what people probably thought we were going to take at that position, is a tribute to Mo Lindquist and what he does with the defensive backs there, and Kane Womack as the coordinator. So I'm excited about those two groups, as you mentioned, and just how different they are than they were a year ago. I think, at linebacker is just, I don't want to say a pleasant surprise, but we weren't expecting to have Deontay Lawson. And unfortunately, he had an injury, but he is back. And that veteran leadership in that spot, along with Justin Jefferson coming back, through the junior college rule and things like that, allowed him to have a year that we weren't expecting. That group all of a sudden went from what we envisioned this year being probably a little more youthful, some new faces, to all of a sudden being a rock solid group that we're really counting on to lead the charge in that linebacker. How can you not love that? So I think the offensive line, having 3 to 4 starters back that are high-level guys is really key. And then there's some great competition to fill in those other 2 spots. So they, are gelling. And as an offensive line, that's one of the most critical things is getting the right guys in the right seats in the right spots, but also just letting them work. I love the depth that we're creating with some young guys coming into the program as well that have a great future. So the chemistry's there in that group. I'm excited about the offensive line, at least the growth from where we're going to be a year ago.
We just all watched Tyler Booker go in the first round of the NFL draft. And anyone who was around him or just watched him on TV, you watched basically a maniac. But if you were around him on Tuesday afternoon, you would think, well, I'd let him babysit my daughter. Like, he's just that nice and kind and lovable. So it's like multiple personality syndrome, but in a great competitive way. When he leaves, there's talent you've got to replace. But there's also a lot of alpha oxygen in the room that is all of a sudden back there that he used to take up. Are you confident you've got guys in your locker room that can fill that void?
Yeah, you don't just replace Tyler Booker with someone else for all the reasons you just mentioned: production on the field, personality, leadership. But what I really think is happening is that we had some guys that have that capability of raising their game as leaders. Now are getting more comfortable. A Parker Brailsford, a Caden Proctor, Jaden Roberts again back for another year. But they saw Book. And they aren't going to be Book, because no one can do that to like how he is, the way he did it, but they can do it in their own way. And more than anything, bring this expectation of high level, taking care of your business, but high level offensive line play. And then the thing about Book is he did it across the board, not just the offense, but the defense, and everyone just really respected them that way. It started with the work, and it's always about the work. And then I think just really, that respect that they had about the work, for him, allowed him to just go off and lead the way he did. And our offensive line, I'm excited about some of those guys in those roles that are going to raise their game. And more guys raising their game is sometimes better than losing this first-round draft pick. That was all everything for you, and Book was definitely that a year ago.
How nice is that when you watch like the old mob movies and the boss, he could be like 5'8", got a nice suit on, and yet he's universally feared. You wonder, how could this be? And it's because when he turns his back and smiles and walks away, he's got the right soldiers who'll do whatever needs to be done behind the scenes so he can keep his hands clean. How nice was it for you, maybe not mob boss style, but how nice was it for you to know, I could try and get on these guys and jump down their throat, but I've also got a Tyler Booker in my locker room, and I got other guys, Lawson's like that. I got those guys in that locker room, so they'll take care of it. It's nice to have at your disposal, isn't it?
I think that the thing I really appreciate about not just Book, but a lot of the leaders, I think about Jalen and Malachi and, a lot of the other guys that just are moving on. What the guys that were in this program, they, again, embraced change. They embraced me. And when we really had to raise our game, or, there was a time or moments in practice or games that we needed to just really like face reality, and they felt that from me. They came back and really, supported you and backed you up. And I love that about those guys. And I love that about who we are right now, because I think we have even more of those guys now that we're in year 2. Realistically, 9 or 10 guys that chose to stay and not enter the NFL draft is a big number, and it goes even beyond them. And they all really have this passion. Again, I use the word investment, this ownership in what we're doing right now. And I feel like if there's a time where we're in the weight room, we're on the field, any of our coaches, ask for more, I feel like those guys are going to lead the charge and going to support, what our coaching staff asks. And that's, again, the investment, the ownership that leads to a culture that you really love being a part of.
When you take over a program, especially when you did, at the time you did last year, there's so much that you're just doing on the fly. I'm not saying you haphazardly threw together a staff, but you got to get a staff put together pretty quickly. And then you've also got the portal stuff, and you're learning 1,000 different things at once. And you're making a lot of decisions. You're putting your processes and your systems in place, and you're just kind of crossing your fingers hoping you did it all right. How do you know when something needs to just be dumped and we need to, all right, I don't like this, let's do it a different way, versus it's not yielding immediate results, but I trust that we did it the right way, let's just let it ride? How do you know when it's A or B?
Mm-hmm. I think there's two pieces. I think one, when you make changes, it probably fits just the way you organize things or the way you know how to make it all come together. One of the biggest changes we did, right, was morning practices. I don't think there's anything wrong with afternoon practices. I just know how I make morning practices work with the rest of the schedule, and I can justify all the things that I think are better for that, where there's afternoon practice teams I've been a part of and programs. We did the same thing there, but it's just now knowing how you bring things together, and I'm pretty convicted in that. And that was one of the big changes I just feel like, we needed to make. But I think a lot of times, when you come to a new place, what you got to do is listen. You got to feel it. And there's things you got to hurry up and do because it's most important. And, academics needs to know how to rearrange the academic schedule when kids register for morning practice, and you got to be on that and make that move now. But I think, I appreciate the input and just the guidance. And obviously Coach Saban for 17 years did some things along the way, that were probably reasons for why they were the way they were. And, you really want to make sure you're listening to, and seeing why things are done, what the operation is, and why these people were in these seats and doing the things that they were doing. And hiring a staff, as you mentioned, that was probably one of the most intense times between that and the portal there in the middle of January to the end of January that I've ever been a part of in college football. Just every program having their staff together through their bowl season, on the road recruiting in a contact period. It's different than taking a job in early December, when you are kind of, probably in the same boat as many people. The portal's open to everyone and so forth. So that was an intense time. And I just relied on, my experiences, my relationships, my experiences having to move around a little bit, and the acquaintances I had, the relationships I had, again, getting those pillars in place and then building support staff underneath all of those areas.
In a 24-hour day during that period that you labeled the most intense, from 12 midnight to 12 midnight, what would a typical day have consisted of, including wake up, go to sleep?
Well, fortunately, there was conversations across the country, so you use the time zones to your advantage, right, from East Coast to West Coast, and that might be with hiring the staff or recruiting West Coast guys, and we signed some West Coast guys, brought some in, so that takes you later in the day, and you can get a lot of work done, and you can do your personal things after midnight, but just the time when the guys were around and meeting with them, pretty much big group, small group, team meetings. That was what a lot of it was about. Interviewing coaches to fill in the little spot, the few spots that I maybe hadn't, filled yet. I really wanted to be thorough, and so, meeting with 3 or 4, guys on Zooms or phone calls, was really important to me to fill in, make sure I got the right people to support the coordinators, and it was a conversation. I guess one thing that I'm glad I did is that when there was a conversation to be had, I didn't try to just blow through it. I spent a lot of time in those conversations, and in particular with our team, and met with a lot of guys. And sometimes they would just line up, they wanted to kind of hear and get to know. You try to do it efficiently in positions or, as a whole team or side of the ball. But I'm just glad that I took the time to meet with them, because I think it paid dividends as the spring went along and, of course, into the season.
When you've talked to people, it could be back in Washington, could be back at Fresno, could be anywhere. It could be the Dakotas. It could be wherever you've been at previous stops. You've got friends and relationships there. I assume after the dust settles a little bit, after year one, they hit you, and the most common question is, all right, what was the biggest thing that stood out? What's life in the SEC like? What's head coach at Alabama actually like? What are a couple of things that you've most consistently told them?
Yeah, humidity.
Yeah.
And then in the SEC, just I think that every week, intensity. There's a lot of different words I could use to describe, but intensity, and then just the impact that each game has on the next one. Just the wear and tear on the guys, physically more than anything, but mentally. Just every week, having to be your best, and that's what you signed up for. And my challenge to our staff, our challenge to the players is you came here for this reason, and especially being at Alabama. There's a lot of people, pretty much everyone wants to take you down, and you're going to get their best shot. But that's what we all came here to do. We knew that coming in, and so that's probably been two of the biggest things. But I think being the pro team, here in Alabama, and not having anything from NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball that is here. It is about Alabama. It's about Alabama football. That's been just super exciting. I knew that coming in, but it's on a level that I don't think you can compare to anywhere else.
There's a jaded nature you could take the longer you're in this profession of, man, fans can be crazy and they can be really ugly at times, but then at the same time, that your entire life, that you get to live the way you live, your salary being what it is a byproduct of how many people care. So the same people that can rub you the wrong way every now and then are the ones who make the entire world possible. And once you get a little older, maybe you get a little more discernment and you're a little wiser about that. But did you ever have a kind of a wake-up moment, or maybe a pinch myself moment of, yeah, it's not all roses all the time, but there needs to be a sense of appreciation here because I get to do what I love to do. I don't have to have a supplemental job for income because this world exists.
Yeah. I appreciate everything about our fan base. You want that intensity. The alternative, as I've said to many other people, the alternative is to have people that don't really care.
Yeah.
And that's no fun, So I want those expectations. Again, we came here for that. They don't want those expectations to ever drop. Want to keep pushing forward. And again, not just live up to them, but continue to exceed them. And that takes time. And there's bumps along the road. But just continue to stay the course, keep believing that you have what it takes, whether it's me, it's our staff, our team. That's really what it's all about, and that's what it's all about everywhere. But again, everything gets heightened here, and you got to embrace that. You got to love it. You just got to worry about what you can control, and not sit there and try to worry about explaining yourself. Just try to the next day do everything you can, come to work with a great mindset, and know that in the end, you're going to chip away at all these different areas, whether it's the relationships or the things that are happening on the football field, and it will all happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Don't you think that was a little misread? Don't you think sometimes that's a misread when people take a big job? You took maybe the biggest job this sport has to offer, and a lot of the working narrative was, oh man, no one wants to take over for a legend. No one wants to come in behind a legend because of A, B, C, D, E. I remember talking to you last year, and I've heard you talk many times since then, but basically the synopsis is, well, yeah, for most people, it wouldn't be attractive. But for the reasons it wouldn't be attractive to most people, it was attractive to me because there's no one, if you're wired the right way, that has higher expectation than you do for yourself. Therefore, there's no one who can put more pressure on you than you put on yourself. So we're here a year later, and I don't hear people talking about it as much, but like from your vantage point, what was that like when you started hearing that no one wants to take over for a legend?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's just there's no one that's going to put more expectations on this place than I do, and there's no one that's more disappointed when we lose than our players and our staff, and when we fall short. But I'm very blessed to be in this spot. To come in, follow Coach Saban, and again build on the foundation that's already here. It's so strong, And you just know that you're gonna continue to do what you have done over the years, and you're gonna continue to adjust and tweak and get better and get to where you want to be.
Coach, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you.